Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission is always the same, to take a stack of sources, extract the absolute best nuggets of insight, and turn you into the best informed person in the room in record time.
Today, we are strapping in for a journey that is, well, it's equal parts high-stakes political thriller, medieval medical research journal, and a surprisingly explicit romantic comedy.
We are heading to Northumbria, AD 970, to unpack a deeply complex entanglement.
Yeah, and our sources today come from the world of historical fiction, specifically excerpts from The Viking Takes a Night.
And this isn't just a fun novel, it's a fascinating lens. It blends genuine, documented historical concepts, the Saxon, the Bodden, the Viking symbol, the political importance of Jorvik, with this highly specific, character-driven chaos.
That combination is what makes this so rewarding. We're not just getting broad strokes of history. We're getting these detailed, intimate, and often, hilarious insights into 10th century domestic life.
And weird science.
And very weird science. So our mission for you is to quickly grasp the central conflict, the bizarre scientific attempts, and the deep personal motivations that are driving everyone involved.
Okay, let's jump right into the clash of worlds that sets this whole narrative spinning.
Yeah.
The forced meeting at Hawk's Lair.
Right.
We have John, the reclusive Saxon knight whose life is governed by meticulous research, and then Ingrith Sigrundottir, a highly practical Viking princess who is, at this moment, running for her life.
And John, our host, is such an unlikely nobleman. He's the rightful Lord of Gravely, but he actively rejects the title. He prefers to go by Hawk.
Why, though? What's the rejection about?
It's central to his character. He believes he is genetically flawed. He's convinced his father, Stephen, was not just evil, but completely insane.
So he thinks it's in his blood.
He's terrified of it. So he's retreated into this intellectual solitude, dedicating his life to beekeeping and honey research.
He's trying to find peace and purpose in the hyper-orderly life of an apiarist. His whole internal world revolves around the silent, sticky mechanics of the hive.
Precisely. He's avoiding emotional risk at all costs. But his peace is about to be absolutely shattered by his mother, Lady Edith of Ravenshire.
She is the ultimate meddler.
The benevolent chaos agent. She knows John is isolated, and she knows his keep needs help after his cook died.
So what better way to solve your son's need for companionship and hot meals than by sending a political refugee princess, a whole group of orphans, and a handful of armed guards?
She is the catalyst, yes. She sends Ingrith and 8 orphan boys to Hawk's Lair with this, very practical justification that John needs a cook.
But she knows what he really needs.
She knows what he really needs is not peace, but chaos and human connection. She understands him perhaps better than he understands himself.
Okay, so let's meet the uninvited guest. Ingrith Sigrundottir. What's her story?
She's a Viking princess from Stonheim, described as tall, highly practical, and voluptuous. Her happy place is not the battlefield or a long ship, but the kitchen.
Which she organizes.
Like a military commander. She's a force of nature, but a highly disciplined one.
But her presence is a massive political liability. She's on the run.
She is. She's fleeing Commander Leo of Lancaster. And Lancaster is known by the truly chilly nickname, the Saxon Butcher. He's the chief herdsman in King Edgar's guard and notorious for his bloodthirstiness and ambition.
So she is literally the most dangerous package John could possibly receive. And to make matters worse, she arrives in disguise.
Yes, she's dressed in men's attire, the brays, which are those sort of fitted, slim trousers of the period, and an overtunic. It's a common tactic for women traveling alone in dangerous times.
But the disguise doesn't quite work on John.
No. The narrative immediately signals that this political danger is completely linked to this raw physical attraction. Despite the disguise, John instantly notices her, and specifically notes her rather prominent and fetching heart-shaped arse.
That detail right there is the entire tone of the story, isn't it? High political stakes combined with this very lowbrow, undeniable physical chemistry.
It absolutely is. It tells us that for all John's dedication to intellectual pursuits, he is still a human man who notices a woman even when she's wearing his cousin's hand-me-down trousers.
And the scene of her arrival is just immediate chaos. Ingrith is focused on feeding this massive group she's brought with her, and she makes her first truly grave mistake.
She uses the honey.
The sacred reserved honey, John's research stash.
She uses it for a batch of oatcakes. John has jars of specific varietals meticulously categorized for scientific study, and she just dumps the precious commodity into a breakfast batter.
For John, this is an intellectual crime, like burning a library. For Ingrith, it's just necessary survival cuisine.
It highlights the core conflict right away. John prioritizes research and isolation. Ingrith prioritizes life and practical sustenance.
And what's the background noise to this confrontation?
Utter pandemonium. There are 8 newly arrived orphans running around, including the 5-year-old political hot potato Henry. There's a very difficult bearded goat named Wilfred who seems to live indoors.
A goat named Wilfred, of course.
And then there is Ingrith's aging, tiny, yet fierce bodyguard, Ubi, whom John immediately dismisses as a gnome or troll, driving this loud, cluttered wagon. Hawk's Lair has officially gone from quiet research center to refugee camp overnight.
And the man who wants silence and order is now running a zoo full of political targets, all because his mother decided he needed a cook.
It's a beautifully constructed disaster.
Okay, so now that we've established the chaos, we need to dive into John's world of honey. Because this isn't just a hobby for him.
No, it's his chosen scientific discipline. He's genuinely trying to push the limits of what 10th century medicine understands about the bee and its products.
Let's start with the practical applications. The source material talks about his focus on the medicinal properties of honey. We know, historically, that the Romans used it. What specific uses is John focused on?
He's leveraging that ancient knowledge but seeking new applications. For example, we see him treating Ephraim the woodsman's festering cut. He applies a honey salve, which we know is a natural antibiotic.
Right, anti-inflammatory.
Exactly. But the crucial detail is that John insists on washing the wound first with clean water.
Wait, that's key. In a period where surgeons often believed that pus was a necessary part of healing, John is promoting hygiene before application.
He is. It shows he's a practical scientist, not just some mystic. He also applies honey to broken blisters. His approach is methodical and surprisingly advanced for AD 970. He's trying to systematize empirical evidence.
But then we move from empirical healing to the wildly experimental and, frankly, desperate. I have to talk about the bizarre attempt at contraception.
This is truly a nugget of unforgettable detail. John, so desperate to avoid children because of his tainted blood fear, is trying to invent medieval birth control.
And he's running a clinical trial.
A very unofficial one. He's paying a local couple, Graham and his wife Mary, to test his hypothesis.
And the hypothesis is based on slathering honey. Where, exactly?
On Grahama's man part, before and during intercourse. The idea, presumably, is that the thickness and stickiness of the honey would act as a barrier or maybe even a spermicidal agent.
It sounds messy.
It was a disaster, and the sources do not shy away from the detailed failure. Graham reports that they attempted the liaison in a horse stall.
Naturally.
And afterwards, he lamented that he was still picking straw off my ballocks and in my crack.
Oh, the straw. The stickiness trapping everything in the environment. I didn't even think of that.
And it gets worse. Not only were they covered in chaff and barnyard debris, they were also swarming with flies. The sticky, sweet coating on their most intimate parts made them fly magnets.
So it was just an entomological nightmare.
Completely. And the final damning evidence of failure. Mary became pregnant shortly thereafter, proving the honey paste was definitively not foolproof.
It's a hilarious yet kind of sobering reminder of the lengths people went to control fertility when they had zero biological understanding of the process.
It certainly puts a new spin on the phrase, a sticky situation.
Beyond the questionable medical efficacy, John is genuinely dedicated to the academic side of this. He's teaching the orphans about apiculture, maintaining dozens of jars labeled for their specific floral source.
He's a true specialist. We see him with jars labeled clover, cherry blossom, and even a rare jar of sorrel or sourwood honey. This classification speaks to the difference in taste and quality achievable even back then.
And his lessons to the boys are deeply detailed. He explains the hive population, 50,000 bees per hive, and the astonishing fertility of the queen, laying thousands of eggs daily.
He even tries to normalize some of the messier parts of bee life, explaining that the yellow spots they see on laundry or snow are simply bee piss.
He's aiming for clinical acceptance, trying to demystify the hive.
But he runs into trouble when he reveals the ultimate gross-out fact of honey production, the central truth of his life's work.
Ah, yes. The fact that bees vomit up pollen to create the substance we all know and love.
Exactly. He tries to explain that they process the nectar, storing it in their honey stomachs, and then regurgitating it into the comb. This utterly disgusts young Henry, one of the more sensitive orphans.
And Henry immediately
spreads the rumor to the rest of the children that they have been eating bee vomit.
Which, while technically true, probably doesn't help dinner preparations.
Not at all.
This whole segment really grounds John in the localized economics of the 10th century. How is he, a landed Saxon lord, actually paid for his services as a healer?
He functions entirely outside the coin economy for his healing. His payment structure is pure barter, which reinforces his reclusive lifestyle. He accepts farm goods, eggs, venison, wool, live chickens.
And, most interestingly, manure for his gardens.
Manure is currency in a farming community. It's the ultimate fertilizer.
It is. But the two specific items he receives tell us so much about his personal tastes and the local economy's limitations. First, he gets goat cheese.
Which he loathes. He accepts it graciously, but he hates it.
And second,
He gets a massive, inconvenient barrel of eels.
a barrel of eels. Why eels?
Probably because they're abundant, easily caught in local rivers or fens, and they are a storable, protein-rich commodity. Eels are a necessary, if not exactly desirable, staple.
And the fact that he accepts a barrel of slippery fish and blocks of cheese he despises.
It underscores the necessity of accepting whatever form of wealth the rural community possesses, regardless of his aristocratic status or his personal palate.
Which sets up the perfect contrast for Ingrith. John is accepting eels and manure. Ingrith is about to deliver a culinary revolution.
Her expertise is applied knowledge, the complete antithesis of John's theoretical isolation. The keep's kitchen had deteriorated to plain fare after the old cook died. Ingrith immediately takes command.
And she transforms Hawk's Lair into a daily feast hall, much to John's puritanical horror.
Right. He sees it as decadence. He accuses her of spoiling my people, believing that such richness of diet will lead to sloth and laziness.
That's the Saxon Puritan coming out in him.
But Ingrith is uncompromising, and her menu is astonishingly detailed. She's preparing turkey neck pudding, or nekazan, a savory, rich use of all parts of the bird. She serves poached pike with mustard sauce, creamed parsnips,
And something called a minden sea.
a rich, creamy vegetable gruel, and for dessert, bilberry tarts. This is complex, celebratory food.
But we also learn about John's rigid dislikes.
Oh, yes. He hates cabbage and spinach, but his most profound aversion is to green soup, which he describes with truly disgusting specificity.
He says it resembles what is deposited in a baby's nappies.
A description guaranteed to ruin your appetite. And Ingrith, being the confident, teasing woman she is, uses this knowledge to poke at him.
She weaponizes the menu.
Absolutely. She threatens to serve him nettle soup, which, ironically, is quite delicious once the stinging nettles are cooked down. And then, the piece of resistance, she threatens to use fried boar testicles in onion butter.
She knows exactly how to get under his skin.
And assert her power in the one place he has to concede, the kitchen. So John might be the lord of the manor and the king of the bees, but in the kitchen, Ingrith rules with the brass ladle.
While they're duking it out over boar testicles and bee vomit, the serious political danger is brewing, and it's centered entirely around the smallest arrival, the orphan Henry.
Yes, 5-year-old Henry is King Edgar's illegitimate son, a royal byblow.
And why is that so dangerous in 89-7?
Because legitimacy is everything, and a bastard son, especially one whose parentage is known, is a constant, lethal threat to the designated heir. Royal families were brutal about succession.
The source material even draws a parallel.
To the Viking, Eric Bloodaxe, who allegedly killed a dozen of his own brothers to secure his claim, Henry is a ticking time bomb, and Ingrith knows it.
And this is why she took such drastic measures to disguise the boys.
Desperate, chaotic measures. She shaved all the boys' heads, initially claiming they had a head lice outbreak, a plausible excuse in a crowded medieval keep.
But Henry, with his pale hair, needed more.
He did. She attempted to dye his hair brown using whatever crude vegetable dyes she had, and the result was the ungodly green hair we heard about.
Green hair in 10th century Northumbria, that seems less than effective.
It is, but it speaks to the panic of the situation. And the man hunting them is utterly ruthless. Commander Leo of Lancaster, the Saxon butcher.
And he's not just hunting a boy, he's also hunting a princess.
Absolutely. Lancaster views Ingrith as a commodity. When he later confronts John, he makes his expectations brutally clear. He states he is weary with the wait for Ingrith, expecting her to be agreeable.
Which is a thinly veiled threat of sexual submission and forced marriage.
Exactly. Lancaster's goal is both political execution of Henry and personal acquisition of Ingrith.
Okay, let's pivot to the supporting cast, because they provide so much of the comic relief in this high-tension situation.
Yeah.
First, we have Ubi, the aging Viking bodyguard.
Ubi is essential. John sees him as a physical joke, a gnome or troll because he's so small. But Ubi is fiercely loyal and surprisingly effective. He constantly spits insults back at John, maintaining his Viking pride against the stuffy Saxon lord.
We get a great scene showing his ferocity despite his size.
We do. When Lancaster eventually manages to corner Ingrith in the marketplace, Ubi, tiny but tenacious, strikes the commander on the back with the wooden shaft of his lance.
How does that go for him?
Not well. Lancaster's response is to lift Ubi by the scruff of his neck and shake him like a limp rag. So he's easily subdued by brute force, but his willingness to fight is absolute.
Later, Ubi shaves his own head in solidarity with the other men.
He does. He becomes part of this strange, unified crew at Hawk's Lair. But the most chaotic influence on the keep's reputation has to be Bolthor the Skald.
The world's worst skald.
He was sent by Lady Edith to try and break through John's isolation, a kind of court jester/poet.
And he succeeds only in spreading gossip at lightning speed through terrible poetry.
That's his great talent. Bolthor's compulsive need is to compose sagas about current events. Nothing is off limits. He is the original medieval gossip blogger.
And his saga titles are just priceless.
Magnificent. We have Hawk's Honey, which savagely criticizes John's isolation, accusing him of having cobwebs growing on his man part.
Ouch.
But the one that causes the most immediate uproar is his saga about Ingrith's arrival, the one recited in the Great Hall.
The one that perfectly summarizes the entire narrative tone.
Then came a Viking lass who had a heart-shaped ass. Ingrith reportedly just screeches in horror because her political attempt at disguise has been publicly, poetically demolished.
That detail about the skull provides such vital context on how reputations and gossip were built back then. They were literally immortalized in verse, right there in the hall.
And that's why Bolthor was previously exiled. He believes no subject is forbidden. We hear he was run out of a previous court for composing an overly detailed ode to his wife's breasts. He cannot filter.
Speaking of filtering, let's go back to the head shaving. It started as a practical measure to hide Henry and another orphan, Kivil.
Right, a Nubian boy who was a victim of sexual abuse, whom they were also protecting. The initial shaving was driven by necessity, disguise, and health.
But the trend takes this wildly unexpected, almost anthropological turn.
It does. John, Hammer, and Ordulf are discussing the appearance change in the bathing house, and they start debating the theories of some long-dead Danish warrior.
Balky the Bald.
Balky the Bald, a Danish berserker who supposedly claimed that a shaved head somehow enhanced his bedsport prowess. This is pure folk mythology applied to aesthetics.
And Hammer, John's pragmatic man-at-arms, chimes in, linking this theory to the idea of women riding a bold horse, implying an association with easy passion or lust.
So an entire fashion trend is born out of political disguise and unsubstantiated sexual folklore.
It leads to all three of them shaving their heads, deciding to test the theory. And the fashion trend just cascades from there.
The source reveals that 25 men in the keep followed suit, eager to adopt the look associated with either berserker fighting or enhanced lovemaking.
And the practical outcome of 10th century amateur barbering.
We're told some men, trying to do it themselves or trusting unskilled hands, ended up with hairy patches and back.
So Ingrith's attempt to hide a royal heir inadvertently results in a massive, messy, and sexually charged fashion trend sweeping through Hawk's Lair.
It's magnificent.
We've covered the political chaos and the domestic comedy. Now we have to address the real barrier between John and Ingrith, which is entirely internal to John. It's this deep psychological flaw rooted in his past.
John's fatal flaw is the tainted blood theory. He has convinced himself he must never marry or have children.
And what is the historical basis for this fear?
It stems from his father, Stephen of Gravely, whom John believes was inherently and hereditarily insane. He is terrified of passing the supposed taint onto the next generation, thus creating more suffering. It's a profound, self-sacrificing conviction.
This fear defines every choice he makes, including his romantic life before Ingrith.
Absolutely. He maintains a mistress, Joanna the Potter in Jorvik, but sees her strictly as a convenience. He rationalizes this relationship because she is barren, meaning their encounters carry zero risk of conception.
So his relationship with Joanna is a calculated choice. Emotional distance, sexual release, and guaranteed safety from fatherhood.
Right. He actually proposed marriage to her once, but she declined, preferring her independent life as a respected artisan. Ingrith, however, represents the opposite: warmth, fertility, and danger.
And Ingrith sees this wall of resistance. She realizes that to stay at Hawk's lair, she has to break his fear, or at least leverage it.
She knows she needs a plan, which leads her to consult with Catherine, Bolthor the Skald's wife.
And Catherine offers the iconic analogy.
Yes, Catherine tells her, you need a plan, a temptation plan. Think of yourself as a spider, and Lord John as the hapless fly. Ingrith accepts this role as a predator, a strategist focused on seduction not just for pleasure, but for security.
Her first move is tactical temptation through fashion.
She acquires a new gown, a crimson gunna. The gunna itself is a typically modest, long-sleeved Saxon tunic dress, but this one is made of a soft, clinging wool.
So the fabric choice is key.
The style is demure, but the material reveals every curve when she moves or stands still. She is absolutely weaponizing her physicality.
She then confronts him in the hall, strategically cornering him near his bedchamber.
She goes straight for the jugular, raising the very subject John fears most: conception. She cites Catherine's vague advice on ways to prevent conception, forcing John to acknowledge the inherent risk and temptation of her presence.
And then comes the truly shocking bargain, a very pragmatic Viking approach to intimacy.
Ingrith, who is 31 and still a virgin, proposes a high-control liaison sex play without penetration. She frames it as a right, arguing that she deserves to experience lovemaking at least once.
And she describes her maidenhead as being
Like an albatross, a crushing weight.
Right.
That phrase is so perfect for a medieval context. It's this unwanted burden, this heavy symbolic guilt that restricts her freedom and her identity as a fully realized woman.
And she wants to shed that burden, but without the risk of pregnancy that John fears.
And she turns the power dynamic completely around. She offers him full control of the keep and the kitchen. You may rule the kitchen roost as you will, but in the bedroom, she is sovereign. But in my bedchamber, the rules are mine.
John is utterly stunned by her frankness and audacity.
But the temptation is too strong. He agrees, though he tries to assert control by ordering her to disrobe slowly so he can examine the goods.
That initial encounter is full of this intense psychological push and pull. John, always the strategist, favors anticipation over immediate consummation.
He stretches out the pleasure and the delay, turning their encounters into this highly controlled exercise in delayed gratification.
He also uses highly evocative, almost scientific language to describe her response.
Yes, he notes her rapid physical arousal, that her breasts ache and her nether region weeps, which confirms her own powerful attraction. And in a callback to his life's work, he compares her movements to the creatures he studies,
telling her she jiggles her rump and sways her hips like a bee dancing.
He also maintains a degree of control by demanding she continue to wear the crimson gunna, but with naught beneath it, maximizing the anticipation. He tells her, when you walk and your gunna rubs against your turgid nipples, you will think of what is to come.
It's intensely intimate, deliberate, and deeply emotional, even without full intimacy.
Their second night, detailing all the torturous touching, becomes known as the half a meal. Sex play, meaning mutual pleasure, was achieved without penetration.
And Ingrith, despite her calculated start, realizes she is losing control of her emotions.
She concedes she is becoming a besotted fool for him. Yet she enjoys his creative, detailed methods, noting how she enjoyed licking his lips like a kitten with fresh cream.
The limitations of this relationship paradoxically break down John's emotional wall faster than full consummation would have.
It forces emotional intimacy without the physical consequence he dreads. John realizes that despite having had sexual experience since he swived his first maid 16 years ago, his time with Ingrith felt like the first time here. The emotional intensity is completely new.
Just as John's psychological barrier begins to crumble, the external danger from Lancaster explodes into devastating personal vengeance.
Lancaster doesn't just send threats anymore. He destroys the symbols of John's life and kindness. He burns John's beloved rose garden, a collection of rare cuttings acquired over years, to the ground.
And he razes the Rainstead orphanage,
emphasizing that this is a personal war against John's protective nature.
The final escalation of the crisis. Lancaster captures John's former mistress, Joanna of Jorvik,
and sends a taunting missive to Hawk's lair, declaring that the Potter is now his newest mistress. This is a perfect psychological strike. Lancaster knows Joanna is John's weakness because she is his one safe emotional outlet.
So John immediately shifts from researcher to warrior.
He abandons Ingrith and the keep, rushing to Winchester to save Joanna, and Ingrith is left behind, devastated and confused.
She is deeply wounded, questioning if he truly loved Joanna after all. Her calculated seduction feels like it failed.
But Ingrith is a Viking princess, not a damsel. She immediately goes into planning mode, determined to fix the mess she caused by involving John in the first place.
Her plan is radical and defiant.
It is. She first secures Henry's passage, sending him to Jorvik to board a long ship bound for the Northlands. Then she decides to offer herself as a hostage or trade for Joanna at Winchester, completely contravening John's orders to stay safe.
And before she leaves, even Bolthor the Scald, the master of irreverence, produces a moment of genuine, necessary wisdom.
His poem, The Lesson of Danger, is surprisingly poignant. It advises John to heed the message. Cherish what is most important in life. Love overcomes danger any day. It's the core thematic truth spoken by the world's most unreliable source.
The political showdown occurs during the Witan, the King's Council at Winchester. Ingrith arrives with Ubi, and crucially, her brother-in-law Raffin.
This is the peak of dramatic irony and catastrophic miscommunication. John, who is emotionally drained and focused only on Joanna, sees Ingrith arrive with Raffin, whom he doesn't know is family.
He immediately assumes Raffin is her new lover.
His jealousy combined with his panic leads him to an irreversible decision. He's so desperate to protect Ingrith from Lancaster's designs that he claims she is his betrothed, right there in front of the king and the entire council.
Which forces Lancaster to release Joanna.
But Ingrith sees John and Joanna together and believes he has publicly rejected her, choosing the Potter instead. Her pride is shattered. She storms out, announcing that since he won't marry her, she will become a Viking courtesan.
The entire massive public confrontation, fueled by misplaced jealousy and protection, nearly scuttles their future forever.
It's a total mess.
So John returns home, distraught, and he finally seeks counsel from his mother Edith and stepfather Eirik. And this is where the entire narrative pivots.
Eirik delivers the absolute core revelation. He tells John that Stephen of Gravely, John's despised father, was actually Eirik's half-brother.
And the most important piece of information John had based his entire adult life on, the idea of inherited mental illness, is definitively dismantled.
Stephen's insanity was not hereditary. It stemmed entirely from severe childhood abuse at the hands of a sadistic caregiver. It was environmental, not genetic.
So all this time,
John's lifelong fear of his tainted blood was completely, painfully baseless.
it's the moment of psychological liberation. He realizes he has sacrificed his happiness for decades based on a family secret and a total misinterpretation of trauma.
His fear just vanishes. He is so relieved, immediately rushing off to the Northlands where Ingrith fled to propose marriage. He even uses the phrase, "our baby," before he knows she's pregnant, showing his complete acceptance of fatherhood.
He finds Ingrith in Stonheim, and she is still reeling. She is also now pregnant, which happened after a moment of carelessness in the stable after Lancaster's raid.
She is worried about his reaction, given his years of resistance. When John attempts to propose, she snaps at him in frustration. She finally reveals the truth by taking his hand and placing it on her small bump. She's about 3 months along, and shouts the ultimate truth.
Which is,
"I am pregnant, you idiot."
the idiot is probably warranted, but John is overjoyed. No longer bound by the hereditary curse, he insists on immediate marriage.
The subsequent Viking wedding at Stonheim is enormous, involving over 500 guests.
It's a traditional Norse spectacle. Boar, bear, red deer, 50 chickens, and the essential custom of sumbel.
Right, the sumbel. It's a deeply significant Viking ritual drinking session where participants take turns drinking from the communal horn and then deliver boasts, oaths, or sagas. It's a moment of public, ritualized social display.
I'm sure Bolthor had a field day.
One can only imagine. And John, the puritanical Saxon scientist, even bends to the Viking tradition by agreeing to wear a crimson tunic embroidered with gold roses to match Ingrith's garments, protesting all the while.
A profound cultural sacrifice. But the most important element of the settlement is the Morgan Gifu, the mourning gift.
Yes, the financial or land settlement given to the bride the morning after the wedding night, ensuring her security.
And instead of jewels or land, Ingrith requests something deeply symbolic.
She requests a rose garden. She asks him to replace the garden Lancaster destroyed. It's an amazing choice, rejecting material wealth for a symbol of the beauty and connection that Lancaster tried to erase.
It's a physical manifestation of John's healed heart.
And the saga concludes beautifully with the birth of their first child, a daughter, fittingly named Rose, a perfect ending to a tumultuous, sticky, and deeply emotional adventure.
So this deep dive really revealed how John's esoteric honey research, Ingrith's commanding culinary arts, and high-stakes political intrigue all just converged in this one small corner of Northumbria.
But the real story was the psychological struggle. The central tension was never really the Saxon butcher or the threat of a royal heir. It was John's fear of his own bloodline.
And the surprising detail remains that the ultimate barrier to their union was a completely false belief about inherited madness, a historical misinterpretation of trauma revealed only through a family confession.
And we had those wonderfully bizarre details that just ground the era, the desperation of 10th century folk medicine shown by that fly-infested, straw-covered honey contraception experiment.
The sheer audacity of Ingrith offering her albatross maidenhead as a bargaining chip.
And the role of Bolthero the Scald in ensuring that the gossip about their heart-shaped ass and cobwebs on man part was permanently enshrined in history.
We've seen how these medieval figures, despite their lack of modern psychology and genetics, struggled intensely with concepts of inherited trauma, often mistaking the effects of abuse for an innate flaw.
Right. John's entire resistance to happiness was built on a family secret and a lie.
If John's life was shaped by a decades-old secret, something he only had to ask his stepfather about to solve, this raises a potent question for you, the listener.
What unexamined historical narratives, whether family secrets, cultural assumptions, or misinterpreted traumas, might you be carrying right now that unnecessarily shape your modern decisions and resistance to joy?
What truths are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person, or perhaps a meddling mother, to reveal them?
Something to mull over as you enjoy your next oatcake.
Perhaps without thinking too hard about bee vomit. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Hawk's Lair. We'll see you next time.